All right, what is up, everybody? Good to have you guys back. It's been a while. It's been a very long while since we've done one of these podcasts here. Hopefully, y'all are doing really good today. How are you doing today, my world's chillest kid?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Awesome, awesome. I mean, with the new year coming around, I mean, within the province that we're in of Ontario, we got sent back into
Step back
sent back into lockdown,
into
which is unfortunate.
step back into the lockdown, indeed.
Yeah. So I mean, especially since that we're going back into the pandemic, or going back into lockdown, we kind of wanted to jump back into understanding, uh, or kind of discussing, how are we managing the pandemic now at this point, right? Especially because we've been in this for like 2 years now, right? Two
Yeah,
whole years. We're just trying to figure out like how things are going. So, for you, how have you been handling this nonstop lockdown situation? We had our normalcy for a little bit. Well, how's it been for you?
yeah. It's been okay. I think it's definitely been a lot of like up and downs and a lot of changes for sure. Especially for me as um oh, Ashley's coming. Okay. Ashley will be shortly joining us maybe. But yeah, for me, like because I'm a wedding planner and because I do like weddings, it's definitely been an up and down kind of roller coaster in terms of kind of just work and how much work I've been doing, right? Especially when the restriction changed, like near the beginning when everything was locked down, or like when there was more serious like lockdowns or restrictions. I was definitely not able to do as much in terms of kind of just working and even like clientele and stuff. And when the lockdown wasn't as bad, so when we opened, like even just before Christmas, like that period of time right before Christmas, it wasn't bad, and I think I had a lot more kind of like work to do. I actually relatively started a job at climbing gym as well during the lockdown or like during the time that we were off, but
Mm-hmm.
lockdown wasn't so serious, and then like for the past like couple weeks. Because we went back into lockdown again, it's definitely at that point where like I'm not as busy again, just because yeah, like everything's closed, right? Even for work and stuff. Um, and for now, like weddings are still okay because they're not fully restricted, but it's definitely been harder, I would say, than like when we didn't have restrictions. But it's definitely been like ever changing depending on what kind of things the government are closing, and it's definitely put a hindrance on a lot of what I can do, and even just like contacting sites to visit, contacting places to visit, and stuff like that, right?
True. Yeah. Uh, it's just so. I feel like we're always told to just constantly adjust, right? You're
Hmm.
adjusting nonstop with all these changes, and although yeah, like you're saying, like weddings aren't fully restricted, still you still have to keep that in mind as you do all these things. It's kind of crazy, especially for me on the education side. Similar situation. It's like we're not fully closed. School's not fully closed, but it's been a point where they're constantly kind of using virtual options as like a plan B, and I'm like, you can't just like that was not part of the whole plan. You never implemented, or we didn't implement virtual school because we wanted it to be a plan B. We did it because we had no choice, right?
Hmm.
So I feel like a lot of a lot of companies are using this virtual as are starting to view this virtual system as like an excuse to force people to continue working, when
Mhm.
in a regular on a like on the regular it would be like, oh yeah, you don't work that day. So like when it snowed in really hard last week, like they our school board got into a lot of crap for trying to force us to work virtually, when if it's a snow day there's no
Mhm.
school. That's all it was, right?
Yeah.
A snow day is no school. But they were very they got a lot of backlash for it, for just kind of like trying to go back against what they initially stated, and then forcing teachers and students to just go to school because virtual is now an option. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think there really needs to be an understanding that like we're literally just virtual because we have to be, rather than like, oh yeah, we're virtual because this is a plan B and we've made it a plan B from the start. It's like, no, we haven't. Right? We're all of us, you and I, as working individuals, are all being forced to adjust, and we have no say in the matter either. So I think it's a little rough on that part.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I mean, I think with like the restrictions that we have, what do you think about kind of how um like how like have they hindered like other aspects other than work? Like in terms of kind of yeah, like how have they hindered like your church life or other aspects? Has it affected any other part of your life other than work?
I mean, definitely has. I mean, like we said, with the lockdown,
Hmm.
everyone like indoor dining not being a thing, like that hit at the worst time. Literally the day I was going to meet up with a friend who was
Yeah.
visiting from the states. Like we literally
Hmm.
walked around a mall for an hour because we couldn't sit and eat, so we just grabbed coffee and
Yeah.
walked around the mall for an hour. That was like the only option we could have in the cold.
Yeah.
Um, and then like for church, I mean, with the Omicron variant being more contagious,
Yeah.
um, our church actually had a couple outbreaks here and there with specific individuals, whether it's from church or whether it's from outside church. Like I don't know the details, but we have
Yeah.
had individuals who were infected, and our church essentially decided to make it all virtual again for 3 weeks, I think, and we're just starting. We just started to go back again, but like only the people who needed to run the stream were allowed to be at church. So there were some changes and there were some adjustments, and I think one of the
Yeah.
bigger ones for church was like we had a huge winter retreat planned, and then we were supposed to go for it, and literally right before that we had the whole pandemic lockdown
Mm.
situation happening.
Yeah.
So that was pretty unfortunate. So we had to cancel that and issue refunds and stuff. So a little unfortunate on timing, but I mean,
Hmm.
there's really not much you can't. I'm not one to sit and complain about something that I have no control over, because it's just in my opinion it's just a waste of energy, right? It's
Hmm.
like me complaining about it and me like doing all of this isn't going to fix anything, right? None of that is going to fix anything. The only thing I could do is essentially just adjust to it and make something work and find alternatives and solutions, right? And I think that's the only thing we can really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, are you still there? Yeah. Can you update? Yeah, we have someone special joining us. I
It's
can't
been
see
a
the I
while.
can't see the updates.
I'm
Um,
I'm looking at the stream right now and my face is just blown up.
Yeah,
on
because
Steve's
we'll
persona.
update the thing. Don't worry.
And
It looks
you're
great.
alive. That's what matters.
Yeah.
Right?
Sorry, guys. This has
Matters.
been a long time coming. Steve, I love your hair. Oh my goodness.
Well, I mean, you joined in at a perfect time. In the sense of with lockdown happening, we haven't heard you from for like months. I feel like we haven't caught up in months. So with the second lockdown, is though, how have you been doing? How have you been doing?
Second lock. It's been good. I've been working at a retirement home and I've been doing like rapid test screening. And yeah, it's kind of hitting me how uh not okay, I don't want to say bad, but like how prevalent this Omicron thing is because like we've gotten like quite a few positive results so far and every time it's been pretty shocking. And yeah, other than that, I'm doing great. Started painting again, which was pretty fun. And
Nice.
I like that school has been online. I feel like it lets me like pursue hobbies and go to school, and I don't have to worry about like commuting or anything like that. So
Now,
I've been
here's the
enjoying the
big
lockdown,
question.
but that's okay.
Here's the big question. Have you caught the Rona?
Have I caught the Rona?
Have you caught the Rona?
I am very fortunate to say I have not ever caught Corona once. I've had so many of my
Blessed.
friends, yeah, be COVID positive. Have you guys caught Rona?
I have not caught Rona. I am Rona free. I am Rona free.
What you, Steve?
Nope, I'm good. My
Look at
mom
us,
like
man.
my mom like makes me like because she's a nurse, right? So she's
Yeah.
like staring me down, making sure I wash my hands every every like as soon as I come home, she's like, I'm watching you until you wash your hands. I'm like, okay, mom. Yeah, so I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. That's super fair.
Yeah, I'm happy to have not gotten sick at all. Like no symptoms, none of that for
Yeah,
like
for
the whole
sure.
winter season so far. I mean, knock on wood.
Mhm.
Hopefully, I don't get it for the rest of the season. But it's
Mhm.
been good. No flu, nothing like that.
Did you guys ever
Especially,
have to get a PCR test?
I've done rapid tests, not PCR tests.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think you're one of those rare few who've like escaped the pandemic so far without having to get a PCR. Those suckers are nasty, bro. It's
I
like,
mean, I did it at the beginning, like near the beginning of the pandemic, because we
ah,
did it for like when there was that summer, uh, where we had a bachelor party for my friend, and then we're like, we're
mhm,
all gonna get tested for COVID, and that's when PCR tests were still like openly available. So we got
mhm.
that done there, and then I had to double check because someone near me got positive case. So I was like, all right, I'm not risking it. Went for a check. So I did it
Nice.
twice. I mean, and even with the rapid test, I know how to do it like a PCR test where you go into the nasal cavity. So I still make myself suffer to make sure I get like accurate results.
With the rapid test, you're like, oh my
Yeah, you
goodness.
can because as long as you know where the nasal cavity is, you can still send it in like a PCR test, right?
Aren't the Q-tips like much thicker though than the PCR?
Yeah, I make myself tear up every time.
Oh my god.
If you've ever wanted to cry, that's how you do it.
Oh no.
That's powerful, bro. That's quite the flex. Oh my goodness. I'm like choking up thinking about it. Oh my gosh. I'm pretty sure like the piece having to get my PCR twice, I have like complex PTSD from that. It's awful. I would never ever ever in my life do it again. It's just so freaking invasive.
Yeah, if it really feels like you've been like violated in the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really no other way to play it. But like, okay, so you've picked up painting, and you picked up painting again, and then
Mm.
you've been Rona free. You're helping people with rapid tests, and then Stephen and I were just talking about what about like church life? Has your church gone virtual, or have you still been attending in person? Or
Mm. Yeah, no, we went in person for a time for like before the second lockdown and like after uh Ford announced his thing. we've been online, and I've also been kind of like exploring other churches. So I actually
Okay.
haven't been to my own home church
Oh,
in a hot second. Yeah, yeah.
it's, how many churches have you visited then, looking for a new one?
I checked out one church in New York a while ago, like Tim Keller's church. I don't know
Actually,
if you know who Tim
she's
Keller is.
actually moving to the states. She's
What's
Yeah,
just
like,
that?
are you
well,
moving to the
why?
States? Like, what's going on
No,
here?
I don't know. I'm just like, well, church is online, and I understand like it's very important to stick with your church community, because that's who you should be like investing into and whatnot. But I was also like, I mean, we're all online anyway. When will I ever have a chance to like check out a church in New York as a congregant and not just as somebody who's like viewing from afar? Especially a church as big as Timothy Keller's church. So I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And then I've been going to a church in Ottawa recently, and Ottawa is actually like I have been visiting quite a bit, and so I'm like, why not? I don't know, get to know people now. No,
Are you
yeah.
planning to like relocate though, or are you?
Am I planning on relocating to Ottawa?
Yeah.
Uh, we'll see. I think that's in the books for now.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
Come, I'm in Ottawa right now.
Why are you in Ottawa? Oh my goodness.
I'm visiting some friends in Ottawa right now.
You just dang, bro. Like, what made you wanna? Is just you just like friends are just like, hey, Steve, quarantine with us, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's because they got a new house, so I just
Oh,
came to
yo,
visit. Like,
be like
back
a streamer house, the Ottawa house.
oh my gosh.
one of those.
So, I know there are some pretty interesting questions that we were looking at before. The first one being, if you guys are cool to discuss it, what is our position as governments are asking and sometimes telling us not to meet together for worship? Should we be compliant or defiant?
My church has always been compliant.
Mm.
We actually had a discussion about it. And I was actually almost leaning on being defiant once, but then we're just like, there's no point. We should just be compliant. Like, I get, I get that it's stressful, and things like that. But like, we've already had situations with extremist Christians being like, God's gonna protect us, and then like you get COVID. I'm like, oh yeah. So now what does that make it
Mm.
look like for us? You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
a lot of it's like you can't if you say that God's gonna protect you, but then you do nothing to protect yourself anyways, then that's not God's not gonna protect you. That's not how that works, right? It's just a little odd that people mistake ignorance for faith, and like it says clearly that we should be following the laws of the government,
Mhm.
as stressful as it might be. Like we're not
Mhm.
here to cause like waves and chaos, right? That's not our
Mhm.
goal here. So I think that we should be compliant to a certain extent. Obviously, if it's like extremely like restricting to the point where it's like our human rights are in like in question, then I
Mhm.
guess that would be a different story. But like as of right now, it's just frustrating. It's not exactly um, a, a an issue of life, I guess. So that's my
And
point.
to what extent would you say? So you said like to the point of, I guess, infringing on human rights, but I feel like that's so vague. Like up until what would you have to see before you'd be like, yeah, churches, we should probably defy this?
I mean, like with Korea, there was actually a really big one, which was like, it wasn't particularly to do with churches, but it was like, oh, you're not allowed to go grocery shopping unless you're vaccinated, and like that's kind of
Oh
messed up.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
like that's kind of messed up. Only because like vaccination technically is a choice. I'm not like yes, go get vaccinated, but it is a
Mhm.
choice. And to say that you can't shop for your necessities if you're not vaccinated is kind of messed up. if someone doesn't want to get vaccinated, there's nothing you can do to stop it, and forcing someone to get vaccinated just so they can eat and survive, I think is messed up. Like, that's not an ultimatum
Mm.
you should be placing, and that's where churches should step in. Like, that's not okay. And in those situations, I feel like churches could also support in the sense of like, hey, we can buy your groceries for you, whatever it is. Like, in those situations, I think churches should definitely step in, and be like, hey, that's not okay. Um, but I don't. I mean, there was backlash for that, so they didn't implement that in Korea. But yeah, that's like an example where it's like you've now created an issue where it's a survival thing. You need it to survive, and you're cutting that out with like a wall, and that's where you got to draw the line.
Mm. Yeah. See, I remember there was this like really famous situation in Waterloo, I think, Waterloo, Ontario, and the Trinity Chapel Church, I think it was called Trinity Bible Church or something, some sort of Trinity church, uh, wrote an open letter of civil disobedience to the Ontario government about how they will refuse to comply with the regulations. They thought it infringed on, their rights to meet. They thought that meeting in person was, an integral part of the Christian faith. Um, and they let me actually look up that open letter. But yeah, I thought this question was kind of interesting because this issue of whether or not to meet in person is not as easy as just, oh, do we comply or do we defy? Like, I feel like different churches will prioritize different things. Like some churches will think like, oh, like meeting online, it's as close as we can get to meeting in person. People are still, receiving the word of God every week, and they're still able to sort of fellowship in some way online, and we can do that. Like no government is going to stop us from doing that. And so it's not really persecution to have us not be allowed to meet in person. Like, it's not like churches are being targeted specifically and being prevented from meeting in person. But on the flip side, and I have the open letter here. Okay, so I don't have the open letter here. I have the news about the open
You
letter.
lied to me.
It's the Trinity. Oh, and it's the Trinity Bible Chapel. Okay. So they are saying that quarantines, okay, that it's detrimental to a person's physical and mental health for people to be quarantining and not allowed to meet up in person. Solitary confinement, they equated the quarantine to solitary confinement. They said that it was cruel and unusual, that the federal government and medical professionals were putting churchgoers through that. And talked about how church is also an essential service, such as, grocery stores have remained open, shopping malls have remained open throughout the pandemic. So I guess my question for you guys is, do you see church attendance, in-person church attendance, as an essential service? Should be allowed exemptions?
I don't like to call it. Okay, first of all, to call it, um, what's it called? Solitary confinement. Confinement is kind of messed up. Have you ever seen called solitary confinement? That's an extreme. Solitary confinement is like you can't last there for like a week. It's brutal. Like, if someone were to ask me like, would you take $1 million to be in solitary confinement for a month? No, I wouldn't. I'd probably like almost kill myself inside that room. Like, that's not even a stretch. Like, solitary confinement does a lot of damage to you. So I don't think that's an
Yeah.
equivalent like comparison to say that, oh, staying at home is solitary confinement. No, it's not. And it's not like you can't meet people outside anyways with social distancing. Like, it was never. This was written in April. I don't think that was an issue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, plus, if you make if you make like the argument that, oh, churches need to meet, then you have to make the argument that marriage, like, you can't have a marriage ceremony without people meeting. It's like, well, people have adjusted to that anyways. So to me, it's always just, if other people are adjusting, these are, and they are not Christians, and they're adjusting to these rules, what makes the
Mm.
church not able to do that? Why are we exempt from that, to something that we could do and adjust? And why do we have to make conflict out of it? That's my point of view. So like, you've stated all of these things. I'm reading the letter right now, and I'm like, yes, it's true. I don't deny that, especially with this most recent lockdown. I don't think these lockdowns are necessary anymore. That's a personal opinion. It's like, it's not help. It helps, but it's not going to be the solution to everything. It's just a band-aid solution, and that's it. But at the end of the day, it happened, and I'm not. What else can I do about it? Nothing. So I just adjust to it, and
Mhm.
I don't think it's to this point where it's deemed cruel and unusual. I don't think it's like, it's to that extent. I feel like they're
Mhm.
just trying to push a narrative that us Christians have to meet, and I'm like, there's other ways to meet. It doesn't always have to be in person, you know?
And there would be people who would argue that Christians would have to meet, like keeping up with the Lord's Supper, as it's mentioned in the letter, um, the church fellowship, how Paul commanded us to meet regularly as Christians. Some people would say that church attendance in person is not optional, and I used to be one of those people who or one of those Christians who would be very gung ho about like meeting in person. Like, oh, we have the right to meet in person. Why are some places allowed to open and not something as essential as church, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but then a friend um, tell me how by staying at home, by not meeting in person, it actually is a form of showing love to your community and to your immediate neighbors, not exposing them to the virus, not putting them in danger. And it's like a sacrifice you make so that everybody can thrive. And that kind of what um like, stopped me in my tracks a little bit because I was like, yeah, that's true. Like I see what churches like Trinity Bible Chapel are doing, and they want to uphold these very important things, like uh, continuing the sacraments and obeying what the Bible tells us to. But these are kind of like different times than when Paul wrote that. Or I don't know. I don't know. Interesting question in the chat. What's the difference between watching on Sunday versus just watching the VOD later? What do you guys think?
I mean, to me, dedicated worship is dedicated worship. I mean, if you watch the VOD later, sure, but I think a lot of issues stem from, if you're supposed to be focused on worship and you're watching a VOD later, 80% of the time, you're not focusing on it. It's a side thing. I remember someone I remember someone's slip on a slip of the tongues called a church service a podcast.
Oh
I'm not
no.
gonna lie, I have been treating church service as a podcast
Yeah,
to
that's
some
what I'm
extent.
saying. It's like on the back burner. It's
I mean,
something that's like
yeah,
not on the forefront.
yeah, yeah.
I don't think, I personally don't think that's okay. I don't think that's okay.
Mm,
And to be fair, my attention span for service, whether it's in person or online, is also very low. I'm not the most
mm,
focused individual, but I think
mm,
being in person for service or attending service on Sunday at least sets this precedence of dedicating that time, or that time of day, to God. And I think that's the most important, rather than, oh, I'm gonna mix up this time with something else. It's like
mm,
doing Bible study while playing a game, or doing Bible study while watching a movie. Like, that doesn't work, right? You're
mm,
not focused. It doesn't sit with you. You're not really doing. You're just doing the motion. You're not actually doing it for what it's supposed to do for you.
mm.
Yeah, like, I don't know what your thoughts on it are, but that's like, I feel like the weight of that is, it's kind of like, if you miss service, for yourself, how does that make you feel? It's essentially kind of like where it kind of continues to too, or like branches off into.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree that attending live would be better than watching a VOD after. Something about watching like, the recording afterwards. It makes it feel like very. It makes you feel very removed from the church service, and we're already so removed as it is. You know, um, I'm not gonna lie though, I probably am gonna continue doing something on the side just because I'm staring at a screen. Like I stare at a screen all week with school and everything, and then on Sundays I have to continue staring at a screen. It just like so I'm probably gonna continue. Not great. Just like putting that out there.
I say you should just go attend service again when you're able to, in
Yeah,
person.
in person, yeah, bro. I miss in-person service.
Yeah, I haven't pretty much worshipped at home for a while because of being like the praise leader and leading worship and stuff. I have to go every week,
Mm.
so I haven't had to deal with online service. But I know I know myself to a T that it's just gonna be like on the side and I'm playing like TFT or something on the monitor.
Ew, not TFT.
Yeah.
Hey,
No.
I can't go to like a dedicated game like an MMO. Like I can't play Final Fantasy 14 or something. But like, it makes me feel too bad that I'm only focused on Final Fantasy 14. But if it's like TFT, I know for a fact my brain would be like, oh, I can still kind of focus on service and I can kind of focus on the game. Like, you know what I'm saying?
All like I don't know, chess or something. TFT
Chat.
might
No,
as well.
chess, you gotta think. You gotta focus on chess though. You gotta like brain, you know.
Mm,
But TFT, you don't gotta brain too hard.
mm. Steve, what do you think about all this?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think going back to the question of um, like the whole difference between watching a VOD and watching kind of church service online or even just going in person. Yeah, like I think I agree with Tommy, right? Like it's definitely different and kind of where your heart is at, like at the moment.
Hmm.
Like if you're going in person or even just consistently watching it online, every Sunday, like setting a time aside for it, it means that I think, yeah, your heart's there and you're dedicated to kind of spend that time to worship with God and worship God, right? Whereas if you're just watching the VOD, it's like sure, like I think with that, like if you can watch the VOD consistently at a time, just because like if you can't worship sir like if you can't make it Sunday morning, um and like yeah, like if you have work or you have something else committed to Sunday morning, which first of all I don't think you should, but if you do, like and you set up another time to kind of during the week to consistently like watch that VOD or watch service, then sure, I'm okay with that. Like sure, if you set like let's say Saturday nights and you watch a VOD, like you watch church service every Saturday from the previous week or something, right? If you can do it consistently, then I think that's okay, I guess, for me. But more so of like when you're watching the VOD or when you're doing that, are you kind of like as Tommy said, like is your heart there? Are you like focused on that, right? Like are you spending that time? Because like service or even like being at service or being at the like message or whatever, the whole point is to worship God, right? And the whole point is to spend that time to um to learn more about who he is, about and to grow your faith, right? And if you're spending time on that, um like Tommy said, like that, and you're doing something else at the same time and you're not focused, then like if you're multitasking and you're doing like multiple things and you're kind of jumping back and forth between those things, then yeah, I don't think that's healthy in terms of kind of giving that time and spending that time to worship. And also like it in the long term, it also doesn't allow like consistency, because you can just be like, oh, like let's say you forget 1 week, right? Because you're doing something or something, and then it doesn't become kind of like a good habit. It just becomes like an extra thing that you have to do during the week. And you're like, sometimes maybe after a couple weeks you like miss service, and you end up going like, oh, like, ugh, I have to watch service this week. Like it just becomes an extra chore that you have to do, rather than kind of dedicating a space and time for you to actually worship God. It
Hmm.
watching that service becomes an extra thing that you have to put on your schedule, and like try to work out a schedule around it, right?
So for you, it's not about like attending when everybody else is attending, or it's more so the consistency.
Yeah, I think consistency also, but also just kind of like having that time where you set aside to worship God, and being consistent about it, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good
And
one.
Mm.
being focused during that time. So like if I'm like, sure, you can watch. I'm okay with like people watching. Like for example, my parents. Like my mom always has work on Sunday mornings, right? Like because she's a nurse and she can't get away with kind of calling it off. Um,
Hmm.
because she's like full time, right? And she doesn't always have it, but sometimes she has it, right? So like she just chooses another time during the week, which is usually like I think Sunday evenings or like Mondays. But then she chooses a time during the week where she watches like a service, which is kind of watching like the VOD, right? It's essentially watching the VOD. But then she spends that time, and she gives that time to God, to and she's focused, right? Like she's not like doing something else while watching that. She's like she goes like downstairs, and she like turns on like the TV, and she's focused, and she kind of spends time. She brings like her Bible, and she's kind of listening to the message the whole time. She's like very focused. It's sort of like she's like attending like the service in person, but not in person, right? But then like she's not distracted, and she does it consistently. She sets a time aside of the week where she knows that she's not going to be generally working, and then she consistently go like does service during that time, so that she builds up a habit of like that time is dedicated to me watching service, even though it's on a Sunday morning, right? And I think I'm fine with that, and that's fine because she's not distracted, and she's not kind of just doing it as an extra job or something. Um, yeah,
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, like if there's circumstances that you can't go to like Sunday worship, I think that's different. Although of course, like
Hmm.
of course, people. I'm not saying those people aren't trying to get those days off. That's not what I'm saying. Like
yeah, for
it's
sure.
not to
Or
lower
just
them
like,
for sure.
Mm.
yeah,
So like if you have those circumstances where you can't make it to church because there really is no way you can adjust your work schedule, then yeah, you make. I agree. You just got to make that time off. And like worship doesn't have to be on Sunday. I think that has to be said here. That's essentially what we're like. I think Stephen and I are saying, like, worship does not have to be just on Sunday. That's not your Sabbath doesn't have to be on Sunday. That's not how it works.
Mm.
Like your Sabbath is if you want to uh, obey and have a Sabbath during the week, it doesn't have to be on Sunday. Like I know for example, my pastor, his Sabbath day is on Monday, so he does
Mm.
his he doesn't consider giving a sermon on Sunday his Sabbath. He takes the next day off after the Sunday, which and so that could be a different day, and that could be your day of worship if you want it to be. So I don't think
Yeah.
it has to particularly be on Sunday. I just think that VOD watching for a majority of individuals um, is just not the same way that Steven is stating as with an example of his like mom. Like people aren't. I don't want to say faithful. That's not the right word. I'm not finding
Yeah.
the right word. But you guys know what I'm saying. Like people just aren't that, I guess, committed or dedicated. No, that's not the right word either.
Right.
Disciplined. That's the word. Disciplined. Disciplined is the word. So people are not disciplined enough to actually like to actually follow through and like focus on like this is like my worship time and I'm gonna focus on this. So
Mhm.
I think that's the hard part there. People aren't disciplined enough to do that.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I know I'm not. I'm a broken human being.
Cool. I'm gonna move us along a little bit then. Yeah, so in terms of kind of just like we talked a lot about kind of restrictions and pandemic and how, kind of like how we deal with it. Um, so how do you guys like either personally or just even like in general, like how have you guys been kind of dealing with the pandemic in more so of like the more negative kind of things that the pandemic has been affecting. So like for a lot of people, the pandemic or like COVID and all the restrictions that's been kind of like been put on us, a lot of people have been like very isolated, very like suffering or like dealing with like suffering, loneliness, and all that kind of just like issues. So I think yeah, like the question is revolving around like personally, have you guys kind of dealt with um like any of those things that the pandemic has affected you personally, and how do you deal with it, whether it's like fear or isolation, and even like the abundance of like information that's been given out, right? Like what like how have you guys kind of taken um the information that's been kind of given to us? Like do you guys agree with like a lot of what like the information that's said? Do you guys not agree? Do you guys kind of just like pick and choose? Like what have you guys been doing with those, like with everything?
Um, I know a lot of people have been struggling with like loneliness and
Hmm.
isolation,
Yeah.
and um, I've been very fortunate to not have been, just because wherever I live, whether it's at school or at home, like there's always people around. So I've been very fortunate that way. But I have had friends who were stuck living in their apartment totally by themselves, and I asked how they did it, or how they survived. And a lot of people would mention how they set like a consistent routine just so they could feel the day go by, and they also focus on what they were able to do. So like for me, I guess if if I were struggling with loneliness, something that I would focus on a lot more would be, I guess, like painting. That's something that like takes a lot of the time away. I just get like super wrapped up in it. And yeah, I don't know, I guess focus on what you can do and set a routine. That's what I hear a lot. Again, very fortunate that I haven't been very isolated.
Ashley be plugging in her painting like every instance she gets. Like here, check out my painting. Look at I've been painting, you know.
Don't mind me, just
I'm
painting.
painting.
90% of my that's 90% of my personality now.
Unity.
Yeah,
Check out my
yeah.
Instagram. I
Come
actually do have
on.
a painting Instagram. Please do feel free to go
Oh
and
my
support
god, look
it.
at plugging it in. So casual. No shame. No shame. I
Let
respect it.
me
I respect the
let me
hustle.
just hey man, if I'm gonna be painting, I would hope people at least like notices.
Hey, it looks good from back here. So
Thank you,
it
thank
looks
you.
good. So
Let me Yeah, I have several unfinished paintings. That one is the only finished one that I have.
Yeah, I can't art, so everything looks fantastic.
Thanks.
But kind of stemming off from that, the non-serious answer is take vitamin D. For all of you out
Vitamin D.
there, like
Yeah.
legitimately, regardless of the pandemic or not, if you fall into seasonal depression, it literally means you don't have vitamin D.
Is that really
Freaking
it?
get that. No, that's like a good majority of the issue. Like
Oh,
the reason
interesting.
why you feel seasonal, quote unquote, seasonal depression is the understanding that you just don't get enough sunlight, and it's the darker months of the year, right? And once again, like when we finish work, we don't see sunlight because the government won't stop pulling back our clocks for an hour, like so it's a
Daylight.
lot of it's vitamin D deficiency. Like legitimately, if you take vitamin D pills, you'd be surprised how much better you feel through through the winter months, just in general. That's number one. That's like a half joke answer, but also legitimate. Um, but as for the serious side of understanding, like being in education, there's a lot of stress that a lot of kids go through that I, as a teacher, don't know, and I get upset at students who don't respond to me. I get upset at students who don't, like, who clearly aren't there or aren't focused and things like that. Obviously, there's always those people or those students who just don't give a crap. Like they just don't care. They just don't care. They don't want to be there. They're just there for the mark, whatever it might be, just for a pass. But then it also falls into an issue where kids don't know or don't communicate with me, and so like I had a parent literally tell me, oh, I'm out of the country, this kid's doing everything, all the household chores for me, making food, taking care of like siblings and all this kind of stuff, and literally taking the role of the mom while the mom's not there. And I'm like,
Mm.
so you didn't tell me, or this kid chose not to tell me, didn't show up to class for 3 weeks and expected everything to be okay. I'm like, there's a part of me where I'm like, yeah, there's a part of me where I'm like, okay, I understand now. I feel a part of me kind of feels like an ass for getting upset at the situation, but at the same time, if you look at it from my lens, it's like you didn't give me anything to work off of, right? So I understand that people are going through a lot of difficulties and their own personal issues, whether it's family or mental or physical, whatever it might be. But for me, as a teacher, it's like for students, you guys gotta let me know. If you don't communicate with the opposing party, then they're not gonna know, and you need to give them some information for them to actually be able to understand your situation properly, right? So it's like giving benefit of the doubt is fine, but like it's also you can't do that all the time. There's only so much benefit of the doubt you can give before you get emotionally taxed, right? And you get emotionally drained, and it's not that self-care for yourself. It's like you're ignoring that if you just always give benefit of the doubt, and people just kind of view it as, oh yeah, that's just how it is. So yeah, from that standpoint, I'm like, I can understand that everyone has their stresses, but you really got to let people know, especially if you're dealing with them on a day-to-day basis. It's like keep them posted, like even if it's just a little update is good, and
Mm.
keeps them in the know on how they should be responding to you and how they can help you out or whatever it might be. So I think that's a big thing. For me
I feel like that
personally,
kind of
I'm okay.
yeah. I feel like that kind of stuff with, telling your teacher your personal life is so, uh, it's kind of a hit or miss because sometimes your teacher will be very supportive and understanding and accommodating, but then a lot of the times teachers will not be. And I think that deters a lot of students from coming forward and being like, hey, this is the reason why I've been slacking in my work, you know? So I guess like, and because, there are kids who don't do the work because they don't want to. But then there are also kids you know, who actually do have something going on at home. Like, the kid who is raising his family, which I get. Why is the parent like out of the country for a legitimate reason? Like, why is the parent not at home parenting?
Mm.
That's what I want to know.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, uh, it's a lot of like I get how it's hard for students to open up with for that reason, but at the end of the day, if you explain, and the teacher doesn't listen, then it's the teacher's fault. That's 100% the teacher's fault. Like,
Mhm.
the ball's in their court. They chose not to do anything with it. As a student, you have nothing wrong. I'm 100% on the side of the student for that point. But then if you don't tell me and then I respond in that way, you can't get angry at me for responding in that way. If I'm upset because you didn't attend my class, I have every right to be upset at that point, right? Because
Mhm.
I have no information. You can't be like, oh, like, I'm dealing with this. I'm like, okay, you tell me this now after missing 3 weeks of class. I think that's an issue. That's a
Mhm.
whole new issue now, right?
Mhm.
So I still am highly on the side of students should still like reach out and just be like, hey, this is what I'm going through, and if the teacher doesn't respond well to that, then screw the teacher.
Mhm.
Honestly, screw the teacher. They're not respectful of you, and that's unfortunate. And I hope you find a better teacher in the future. But
Mhm.
like, it is what it is. I think it's funny because a lot of teachers are now going fighting. If you've heard the news of like teachers complaining about like mental health for themselves, and it's like, well, you can only fight so much for your own personal mental health if you don't care about the mental health of others. So
Mm.
those people specifically, those teachers specifically, need to get themselves checked.
I can't imagine how difficult it is for teachers and students alike. Like, I would not want to be a high school student right now. High school or middle school, like, yeah,
Yeah,
being a kid is
students have it
rough.
rough. Students
Mhm.
have it rough. I'm chilling. I'll be around. I'll be straight up. I'm chilling. I'm chilling. I'm good.
Yeah.
I haven't had too many issues with it except like one mask policy issue, but that's a story for another day. Whew,
And
that's a story for another day.
what I find really interesting is that a lot of people assume that with the pandemic, like, everyone is just suffering, and I don't doubt that a whole lot of us are. Like, I don't doubt that a lot of people, especially those who live alone, are, like, struggling with isolation, with boredom. Life can be very bleak. And I like how, a lot of policies are made with those people in mind, you know? But on the flip side, though, I think something nearly that isn't really talked about enough is that a lot of people are also actually thriving under the new pandemic conditions. Like previous single moms who previously had to balance between going into office and childcare can now kind of do both at the same time. Like, that's one huge benefit of having to work from home, you know. Um, a lot of international students don't have to pay huge flight fees and insane housing fees to be here to attend classes. There is actually very accommodating in that, and they're actually able to be in their home country as they study here, um, stuff like that. Yeah, I think. And actually, I would like on all these like Reddit forums, like for my school, people are actually not even wanting things to go back in person because of how convenient everything has been with, no commuting, with how classes are recorded and you can watch them later at your own time. And yeah, I know there's like been a lot of flack with like university students, like, oh, you guys just want to stay online because exams are open book now. But what I find is like with things going online, I personally have been able to study a lot better knowing that um, I don't have to factor in commute time. Like, I feel more in control of my own schedule, and I think, and again, this is also because I have a very supportive community around me, which I'm very grateful for. Um, but I'm kind of, I don't want to say enjoying the pandemic. That feels very wrong, but like I'm like I'm not angry at the circumstances, or I'm not angry at the good the pandemic has brought up. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
I think like for all three of us, we're older, we're wiser than high school kids or like elementary school kids. Like if you have I think like third year up, so third year university and up, that age group, I think is able to take advantage of their situation, like working at home and find a way to make it work. I think like that goes with a lot of companies understanding like, oh, our employees are still very productive at home, so when they decide to, if they choose to work from home, we should let them. And like a lot of policies have changed, I know, for certain companies with work from home policies,
Mm-hmm.
because of that reason. It's just like you were saying, like people can be productive as long as you trust them and they've proven their trust in that way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then at the same time, then you have like second year and younger. Not saying all of them, but like they don't know how to manage their time. They don't know how to study. That's the point of school, right? And so for me, it's like I would love for school to be purely virtual. Then I don't have to go to school. I can teach from home in my room, right? It'd be great. But at the same time, I know for a fact that the reason why I choose to go to school and I prefer in school teaching is because uh, students don't learn at home. Not at this age, at least. At the high school
Mm-hmm.
age, 80% of them can't learn at home. It's like almost impossible. They will not retain information. And I've already seen enough of students not learning their previous year's content. And
Oh.
that's not okay. Yeah. That's been a struggle as well. So I mean, yeah, education in that sense is a very touchy subject on the sense of like how to deal with the pandemic and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's rough out here.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's like those education and the healthcare system. I think those are the two sectors that are mostly focused on right now because of how hard hitting the pandemic has
Yeah.
been to it. So it's
Yeah,
pretty
how,
interesting
yeah.
that you have like an inside view of how our education system is doing.
Yeah, how's your mom handled things as a nurse nowadays? Like has things been like actually like escalating as bad as the news states it to be, or
Um, I think in terms of kind of just like I mean, I think the biggest issue is still like the lack of kind of people working um in like the kind of medical field.
Mm-hmm.
Um yeah, like even I was talking with my friend like who's I'm staying at their house in Ottawa. Like my friend he's a doctor and he's like working in the medical field as well, right? Like and my mom as a nurse as well. I think the biggest issue is that um kind of it's not like as much as like yeah, like a lot of them are like more stressed, but I think it's definitely better than before. But I think it's a lot of the issue still comes around like it's not like not so much recently, but I know for a while when like or I guess overall in general, like over the course of the pandemic, um like for Canadians at least, there was a lot of like sure there wasn't that much, but there was still quite a bit of government like funding and government help that you could apply for, whether that was like the like lockdown benefit or whatever benefit, right? And not even in the medical like kind of just like field, but even like overall, like kind of in like the work field, there was a lot of like a lot of people are um I know for like my mom's at least for my like mom where she works at like a retirement home. I know for at least like her kind of area or her workplace that a lot of people are scared to like especially now because of like the whole new variant, but a lot of people were scared to go in to work and they didn't want to risk kind of being at work and uh risk getting like the new variant, and therefore they were just kind of okay with like taking a benefit, whether that's like EI or whether that's like the benefits that the government has been giving. And I know that because of that situation, like they're very understaffed. Like my mom's company or my mom's workplace is always like consistently calling her to see if she can work. And I think it definitely has a very big impact on on people. Of course, like I don't know the details of kind of like how it's affected like each person individually in terms of kind of the work, I guess, or workload and like how they're doing and how they're feeling. But I
Mhm.
think overall, in general, I think for her especially, like she's been pretty tired, I would say. But at the same
Because
time,
like
I mean, like
nurses are
shift.
like,
Sorry.
because nurses are like quitting in droves. So I hear, like
Yeah,
every yeah.
it's because like I think a lot of nurses they don't necessarily find that it's worth to kind of go in to risk um potentially risk exposure to like whatever, right? They rather just take that kind of benefit and just stay at home because they're okay with it or like whatever. And it's the nurses and doctors and people who um are essentially needing that money or needing that like pay, that are working and taking like extra double shifts, triple shifts, and they're like super tired, right? Because um, like they're working like double shifts or even triple shifts sometimes, and they're also being exposed and having a risk of like being exposed, and they're doing so much more that the balance is really hard. And I know like yeah, and like I think a lot of people don't want to do like the job because essentially it's
It's
like
scary.
what's stopping them from kind of just taking that benefit and like like not working, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
how like high stress their jobs are sometimes.
Mhm.
But I think it's definitely getting a lot better now. Um, but yeah, I mean, the kind of the whole medical field's just been like on and off. I don't know how because she works at a retirement home, so I can't say about hospitals and stuff. But
Right.
like, I think hospitals like for like I think it's like much worse. I would assume for a lot of places are like in terms of the hospitals. Um, but I mean, at least now that like cases are slowly going down and we're slowly getting better, like the ICUs and the kind of beds are getting like they're like everything's getting more like people are understanding, and even like as bad as like the restrictions are and like the way that I think government issues government could be handling things, as like bad as it is, I think they're doing like Canada's doing like an okay job trying to manage the whole like situation.
Hmm.
um yeah, like I don't think hospitals are like terrible right now, but there
Mhm.
definitely has been points where like I don't know what's going on now, but there definitely has been points where I heard like people like all my friends working at like the hospitals, like all the ICUs are like what like 100% filled, and like there's no spots for like a lot of things, right? And I think that was like pretty bad, but I think for now it's like getting better. Uh, yeah.
Dang. Yeah. That's. Oh yeah, that sounds intense, and I mean, looks like literally all of us are once again. Everyone. Doesn't matter where you are. Everyone has their own struggles that they have to deal with in their field. It's literally how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of to wrap it up, I think our question that we wanted to, I think we talked about this before. The first time we talked about the pandemic was like the whole idea of is the pandemic God's plan, or does it, if not, or whatever, does this
I read
fit?
this question and then I was like, this could be like we could talk about this like shortly, but we can also go into like a
Yeah,
very long discussion about this. And
yeah.
I'm like,
Let's like close it off. Let's like close it off with like a short discussion on this, like just like on an idea of like, would you consider this? Once again, we've talked about this before. Would you consider this to be quote unquote God's plan?
yeah,
I think it's God's plan, but if it's God's wrath, I seriously doubt it. Um, yeah, I'm sure like there's a reason why God allowed this to happen, and I'm sure it will work out for our good somehow. Like, I don't know. Some of the media thoughts maybe this is going to teach us to appreciate church attendance more. I've got no idea. But like, I think it doesn't. I don't think it's helpful for Christians to think of every bad natural disaster as God's wrath. It's gonna like. I feel like
for sure.
that. Like, yeah. I feel like that paints him as a very like vengeful,
Evil
wrathful,
God, yeah.
yeah, who like enjoys human suffering, and that's not the case. Like I know he
Exactly.
lets suffering happen for some reason, but he doesn't relish in it, and I don't think he's like up in heaven being like, yeah, I got you now with the COVID. Like, yeah, you're gonna learn your lesson today. Like, I don't think he's up there thinking like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's the idea that God doesn't give us or force doesn't give suffering like on purpose. That's not for the sake of suffering is not why he does it, right?
Yeah,
He does it's we put that whole issue of if someone's mourning, then let them mourn. Like it's not you can't say, "Oh, it's all part of God's plan, yo." If someone died, your family died because of COVID, don't worry, that's God's plan. It's like, no, it's not. That's not how it works. That's
like
not that's
that
not
is
how
like
God's
it's
plan
yeah,
works.
it's like so unhelpful to say. Can you
Yeah,
imagine? It's like, oh, like you trigger warning, like you lose a baby or something. That's like,
yeah.
something awful. It's like, that's like God's plan.
It's like
God has a
no.
plan for you. You don't need to worry about that. Like God has a plan for you, and you're just like, dang, bro,
It's yeah.
way
It's
to, yeah,
the wording is important. It's not that that's God's plan. It's that's not God. That's not what God wanted, or that's not what God wished for you. That's not it. But God later on, you can speak with them. It's like God can use that suffering that you went through to better you and strengthen your faith in Him. Like that's a definitely, and that's not something you say like a month, 2 months in. You can have that conversation years later, but the person has to be like over their sadness and mourning or whatever it might be before you have that conversation with them to just bring it up and say that's God's plan. That's just insensitive. That's not being a
yeah. I think of
supportive
them in the moment.
church
It's
member.
incredibly.
Yeah, it's just rude. So let's not do that, everybody. Let's be supportive and loving and understand. But Steven, you got any other final things you want to add about it with God's plan about the pandemic and stuff?
No, yeah, that's it. I think.
All right. All right. Well, with that, then we'll end off today's podcast here with Past the Salt. It's good to be back. We'll be running every month at the last Monday, if I'm not mistaken. And so it'll be at 8:30. So please make sure you tune in at that time. You'll be seeing at least myself for sure, and then whoever is available for that Monday with scheduling, you'll be seeing them. Hopefully, some new faces here and there as well. If you have any questions that you want to ask us, or you want to ask us for the next one, maybe we'll have a short like Q&A section. Come join our Discord! !Discord in the chat. Make sure you post it maybe somewhere in like suggestions or something, and save to a question for the podcast people, and we'll try to bring it up for the next one. But otherwise, that is it from us, Ashley, Steven, and myself. and we'll see you guys next
Did you
time.
guys want to plug in anything before you leave? Ashley,
Uh,
you plug in some more page.
Ashley.paints on Instagram. Please feel free to send me your commissions and
Actually,
anything
you
for
can plug
y'all.
in your thing on our chat if you want.
Yeah. And
Yes,
for
like
myself, twitch.tv/teachertile. Or teacher tile, I'll be streaming. I stream irregularly. I'll try to get back on a regular pace probably once semesters 2 starts for school. But I stream just work, lo-fi stuff, chilling, and games when I'm done my work. So yeah, come feel free to join in and have a good time.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for coming out. All of our announcements and information can be found on our Discord, like Tommy said. So !Discord. We do have a chess tournament coming up in February. So if you're into chess, you should join. You can win lots of prizes. It's gonna be February 26th. And then the sign-ups close on February 19th. Next month we actually won't be doing a podcast. We'll be doing an interview next month. So stay tuned for that. But then we'll be back in March, the last Monday of March, to do the next podcast. So join us then. Yeah, and again, like Tommy said, if you have any questions, join us on Discord and feel free to message any of our admins. Um, Other than that, I'm gonna close us off quickly in prayer, and you can close us off um, in the stream. Dearly Father, thank you again for this time that we're able to come together and just to talk and just to kind of chat with familiar faces, Father. And Father, as we continue, as we reopen things on the end of January, at least in Ontario, and even kind of go through the rest of um, this pandemic and go through this wherever you are, Father. May you just really be with us and be with everyone who, is feeling isolated, feeling lonely, and going through suffering, whatever they need, Father, that you're just able to be there and to be able to care and love them and to, just watch over them. And Father, uh, as we continue to grow together and as we continue to fellowship, um, through and kind of manage and learn to deal with all the restrictions that's happening and all the changes that are happening in the world, Father, that you would just be with us every step of the way, that you would be guiding us, and that we would just be reminded that whatever we do, that we do for you to glorify you, Father, that we would that we would just learn to get to know who you are um, through this time, Father. And as we continue to grow together as a community, as lightly salted, may you just be with us into this new year. I pray all of these things in your name. All right. Amen.
Amen.
All
All
right.
amen.
right.
Thank you guys for coming out. Dan, if you could close us off. I can't see the stream, so I don't know why he's closing us off, but